What's up? I'm Benny.
And I'm the Stash.
You're gonna watch Cartoon Theology.
On the X.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. Heresy.
Welcome back, party people, to part 3, okay?
Episode 3, part 3.
Of the, what are we talking about? Oh yeah, did the devil make you do that, or can the devil make you do that? And we're going to look at one of the kind of crazy things. It really doesn't have anything to do with what the devil makes you do or anything, but it's just kind of one of those odd ideas that people have about Satan,
Or
that
Satan's companions, I
technically
guess.
Satan's
It's about Satan.
Satan's lady friends.
technically it's Satan's lady for
It is
say it that
Satan's
way. It
lady.
sounds so bad. Oh God, it sounds horrible.
I hate it.
But anyways,
Because she's not so much. It's not so much a thing.
so anyway, so this episode we're talking about the idea of Lilith. Okay, and if you don't know anything about
Well,
Lilith,
and that's a good
It's
way
a
to put it.
bunny
It's
hole.
the idea of Lilith. She's not real.
She's not.
we're not
Yes.
talking about your Aunt Lilith. Okay, if you have one, that's
really hope not. That's-
who we're
that's-
talking
The
about.
the rich
true,
Aunt
Dad, on
Lilith that won't give you any money.
Yeah, we're not talking.
She's elusive, likes to live in.
I thought she
The
was married to
desert.
Frasier and she left. And
Not that Lilith either. Not that Lilith either. Even though she was a horrible woman.
I think she
in the
was
show.
named after this Lilith.
She may have been. I don't know. That's a very good possibility.
Don't name your
anyways.
child Lilith. That's the point of that.
Lilith.
So
Jezebel. Yeah, probably.
I don't know if it's that bad. But anyways. So
I don't know, it's pretty bad.
We're gonna get into this. If you've never heard of Lilith, then you're not as familiar. We're gonna give you the lowdown on what that is, and then we're gonna talk about whether or not that's even in the scriptures or biblical in any way, shape, or form. So go ahead, Ashley. You got the Lilith goodness, right?
Yeah, I guess
All right.
I'm the token woman at this table. Might as well, right?
Boy,
Let's toss
every
it that
feminist
way.
in America just rolled over in their grave right now.
No. So right now, I guess like
They're all
a lot of
dead.
people might be
maybe
familiar
not.
with Lilith because a really popular show on Netflix, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. She plays a huge role as Madam Satan. That really has nothing to do with any of the lore behind her.
Okay.
Lilith is an idea.
That is a fictional show, by the way.
It is a very fictional.
Well, there's a
it's
very
heresy.
popular idea of her being with
this
Satan,
queen
like being
of-
with
she's-
the queen to hell.
Modern pop
So she's
culture is
like-
looking at her as the
Was it
queen of hell.
Persephone? Wasn't it Persephone? That was
Yeah,
the-
in Greek mythology,
Greek
Persephone.
mytholo-
But this view
queen
of
of
Lilith
Hades.
is not like Persephone.
Persephone is not a bad
no.
person.
Yeah,
whereas-
that's what we're saying. It's,
Well, and
it's like
whereas
Persephone, but
this-
totally different.
Like this view of Lilith in pop culture is she's terrible, she's conniving, she's all these things. She's similar to that lore in the fact.
So she's kind of like Bad Janet from The Good Place?
She's
I've never
Satan's
watched The Good
wife.
Place.
Okay.
No,
like,
no.
well-
So the idea of Lilith,
Culturally, she is. Culture in
culturally-
current culture, she is.
No, she's like the mistress.
Viewed as-
She's not the wife. They're not
No,
married.
Lilith
She's
is never the
mistress.
wife. She's the mistress.
Always the mistress.
Yeah.
That's the key here.
I mean, I guess there are some.
that
There are
makes it-
some where she's the wife, but it's never
majority. It's
So she's Satan's hoe.
pretty much.
Okay.
It's the idea, and that's really what the idea of Lilith is.
That's why she's so angry.
Really, no. So like
Satan's baby
I-
mama.
Lilith is like if we go back, Babylonian demonology, she's this idea, this winged spirit who plagues pregnant women and infants.
Okay.
You know, she was dangerous to pregnant women. A lot of times this idea of Lilith very early on was to explain miscarriages, infant deaths, deaths with women during pregnancy, and that, this demon would come in the night and prey on young men because she was a sexually frustrated demon who was infertile and couldn't have children, just this terrible being, and she preyed on men.
So kind of like a succubus.
Yes,
Okay.
there's a lot of that intertwined with what the idea of Lilith is. And she shows up in a lot of different stuff in Babylonian. She's on pottery. People wore amulets of her because they believe that if she heard her name or read it, in their houses. I mean, they found houses with paintings and stone plaques.
Really?
There's a really old one.
So they thought that if they had a painting of her,
Yeah, like
that
with
she'd
her
come in
name.
and go, hey, I like that painting, and leave.
Yeah, that's really the idea. There's like an early
See you later.
plaque of this winged creature who's Lilith, and it has her name on it, Lilith, and that text. And if she's seen it, she would flee. So they believed it was a thing of protection, you know, kind of to explain.
Kind of like a jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, pretty much. The earliest mention of her is in the Gilgamesh and the Halupu tree. I am saying that all wrong.
Halupu?
I don't know how to say
The
that word.
Lupu tree.
Halupu.
Hulupu.
I'm guessing that's
Looks like Hulupu to me.
Halupu tree, and that's from 2000 BC. So that's
Babylonian for poop.
Babylonian, like really old. Old.
I don't know.
There's so many different references, and a lot of those early things are again like she is this demon. She preyed on women. She, what is it they say? Like literally, plaques would read, "Oh, you who fly in the darkened rooms, be off with you this instant, Lilith, thief, breaker of bones." This is where, and people would write this because they were really afraid that instead of like modern science, like our disease, medical stuff that like they didn't have back then.
Genetic abnormalities.
Or just, you know,
Biological
difficulties.
abnormalities.
Probably super easy to be a doctor back then.
Sanitary conditions, also, you know, disease, bacterial, things that would, or even for mothers afterwards having difficulty after birth. It's not like, you know, it's the desert. There's not like, you know, a fresh bathroom and toilet paper and gloves and all that fun
Couldn't
stuff.
imagine.
Yeah, so,
Could not imagine.
Boiling lots of water and you get a lot of rags.
but it's
Hope for the best.
interesting because you see all of this where she's this demon, but then we get to like the 7th century and the alphabet of Ensira comes out. And that's where we take this idea.
Didn't we, last time we talked about that, which wasn't on video, but we decided that it was definitely a satire.
Yeah,
writing?
but back then people read, this was old, you know, it's kind of like folklore. People get it around, but then like, you know, it's what as they say, truth is stranger than fiction, but people start to believe these fictions and make it a truth. And so in the alphabet of Ensira, it's contains 22 episodes. Each episode is a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And in the 5th episode, we talk about Lilith, and that's where it's kind of in the time of King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. His son is ill. This hero, Ben-Sira, comes in, gets help from Lilith, and like she's evil. And it just goes on this whole story about who she is and how she was the first wife of Adam.
Wow.
And that's where it just kind of goes boom, 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 boom. And the bunny hole gets really
Weird indeed.
Yeah. Heresy.
Very much so.
You know, in some media, she's like, if there's a show or something about vampires, usually like if there's a matriarch of the clan, her name is usually Lilith.
Yeah, and then
Like in the movie 30 Days of Night. You ever seen that movie?
No, I haven't seen that.
It's a movie about these people up in Alaska that have 30 days of night because it's so far up.
They're plagued by vampires
And
for 30 days.
vampires show up and
They're like, blah, blah, we like this. It's no sun, blah, blah. For 30 days.
well, no,
not say blah, blah,
basically that's it. Is this clan of vampires makes their way up there, and they decide they want to stay because there's 30 days of night, just complete nighttime.
Yeah.
But there's a second movie in that series, and in that movie, the main villain is a powerful vampire named Lilith, leads a clan of vampires.
well, and like there's some of that lore comes from like so in Ben-Sira, it obviously he starts talking about Genesis 2:18, the creation of man and woman, and in the fanciful additions to Ben-Sira, it's this human couple begins to Adam is created and then Lilith is created also. So they're kind of taking that biblical and like squeezing in that there was another woman, Lilith, and the couple begins to fight. Lilith refuses to lie underneath Adam during sex, and that that her rightful place is on the bottom. So this is probably where the earliest indications of feminism are coming out, and that he believes that Lilith should be submissive to being on the bottom. That's her place, and she doesn't want to be ruled over. That they're equal because they're both made from dirt.
So this is like the first advancement of missionary position?
Well, I think it's more of like this is the first feminist.
So
So-
Lilith is just a really angry feminist.
You would be so surprised at how important she is to the feminist
The
movement.
current feminist movement actually.
Love Lilith.
They
Praise her.
love Lilith and praise
Yeah.
her very much.
And so,
But it really comes from this particular.
So
Which
like,
was a satire.
yeah, and so
Which
in
was
this,
satire. It's
yeah,
not
so
even-
in
it's
Ben
not even
Sarah,
biblical.
Adam and Lilith are important because they're both made from the same material. Fast
They're both-
forward, Eve meets Lilith. Lilith is, depicted with this woman's face, but like a serpentine body, kind of like vampire
Wait a
snakely.
second. Wait a second. Wait. Here's what you're saying. Here's what you're telling me, is that she was with Adam. She didn't want to.
She doesn't want to be underneath him.
She doesn't want to be underneath him, so she leaves Eden.
But then she gets jealous because he gets with another girl.
No. Here's what happens. So she ends up leaving Eden.
Yeah, so she gets struggle. Okay, so the struggle
and
continues.
God won't let her leave.
So she gets mad with Adam's stubbornness and ignorance, and
God creates another girl.
But no, here's the thing: she says God's name.
Yahweh.
Yahweh. We were at the really cool.
Yes.
That was the word left me.
Messianic.
Messianic
Yes.
Jewish, and
Yes.
it was like you do not say the Lord's name. So she
They say
invoked,
Adonai instead
yeah,
of
and so
Yahweh.
she invokes Yahweh and gets thrown out of there. God sends like angels looking for her. She's like out in the earth or
Like
whatever.
the life of Brian. I don't know if you've
Kind
ever
of,
seen it.
yeah. She's not earthbound.
Does she? Then she gets.
She's
jealous
winged
when
devil. She
meets
gets
Eve?
like so. She flees to desert spaces, and in the alphabet of Sarah, her destination is the Red Sea.
Okay.
She gains her independence from Adam by going there. And she's mad, she feels rejected, angry. Even though she's the one who left, she's like all mad about it. You know how
Yeah,
women
yeah.
are. We're difficult,
I-
I'm mad at him, but it's my fault.
Dude, I'm not touching that with a 20-foot rod.
How about we just let you talk about that one?
So,
She said it, we did
in
not.
the alphabet in Ben Sarah, God tells Adam that if Lilith doesn't, so God's talking to Adam now, and he's like, if Lilith doesn't return, 100 of her children will die each day. Apparently,
How many children does she have?
so
I thought she
before
wouldn't
she
lay
left,
under him.
apparently she was amazing. She was amazingly fertile, had a ton of children.
But how? Because he wouldn't. They wouldn't.
Look, it's.
Okay.
I didn't write the text, man. I'm just reading it.
Okay.
It's satire.
Yeah,
So.
They barely had sex one time.
And then she gave
100
birth.
So
babies.
they come to look for
Logic,
her,
is
and
it there? No.
she is.
That also
She
is.
and like her punishment, she's
That's not
ridden
heresy.
barren.
That's just.
And so in
that's just
punishment,
not
she
biology.
comes to kill. So that's kind of where they're bringing
I mean,
it back
it's
to
also
this.
heresy.
They're coming back to the
To the
Babylonian
infant, yeah,
mindset.
where
of
because
being-
she's
okay.
punished from
Yeah, yeah,
leaving, she's stricken with being barren and can no longer have children. So she becomes very vengeful, very angry,
Yes.
in murdering of children and women. So that's kind of where I guess they're tying it back to the Babylonian. And so she's like, they're like, she's gonna, Ben Sarah saves the day in the end, giving her this amulet in which she can't hurt anybody, trapping her, bound by this amulet, right? Kind of like Genie in a lamp. He's a hero.
Okay.
But people took this
This,
and kind of,
This doesn't have much to do with this, but there's. This is gonna show my how much of a nerd I am. But there is a character in tabletop RPG games
Yes.
on paper. She's a spider queen.
Uh-huh.
Her name is Lilith as well.
Interesting.
Talking about hundreds of kids. I was like, the spiders lay hundreds.
yeah.
Yeah, it probably comes from this, honestly.
Diablo Rebirth of Souls is the third one. It's a video game. Has that same principle
I've
where
never
Lilith, well, I have, and so Lilith is depicted as a spider queen with hundreds of babies. So I guess it's all these little plugins where
So these different.
it's crazy because they try to pick in part for Genesis 1.
Yeah, I know. He called me too. Continue.
Oh, yeah, okay. My squirrel brain. So a lot of it they're trying to pull from Genesis 1. That
okay.
just
They're reading
Genesis.
into it.
Yeah, they're
Yes,
picking like a little space, and kind of inserting. So that's like really where this whole idea. And then obviously like through time, people start retelling this, comedies.
Producers
tragedies.
get a hold of it
I
and
mean,
make
early
movies.
Renaissance people pick up
Yeah,
on this, start
yeah.
doing
Goes
plays,
from,
and
goes
picking
from
this, and then it just
being
kind
Adam's first wife to somehow Satan's.
Well, like,
Mistress.
so, a lot of people believe that the alphabet of Sarah, some people think it's serious, it's really just satire. I mean, it mocks a lot of the Jewish texts of that time,
Yeah.
a lot of, like,
And
So what you're saying is,
when was that
Rabbi
written
Studies,
again?
a very long time ago.
who wrote it? Did Ben Sira write it?
The alphabet of Ben Sira is anonymous. The author is not known. It was written in the
Whoever it
7th
was,
century.
He went to go hide.
He was probably
Which is why they believe it might be satire. It's
He was probably
really-
one of the first comedians.
Really, it's
Possibly.
so like they said, it mocks the Bible, the Talmud, other rabbinic just texts from that time. It's very irreverent to serious subjects.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's lewd entertainment it's really what they're believing this was. But some people took this like text and, you
Thought it was serious.
Yeah, it's like when your aunt posts something about, the government is putting trackers in the COVID vaccine.
It's the original of that.
Stuff in the water to make the frogs gay.
But so like,
Or when someone posts a picture of Obi-Wan Kenobi and thinks that it's Jesus.
God admit,
Thanks,
he's
Grandma.
Exactly. Or that.
Thanks,
or
Grandma.
But what's
You're too
crazy
afraid to have Jesus on your timeline.
like is now the modern day feminist movement celebrates Lilith and her bold struggle for independence from Adam. I kid you not, that's what it said verbatim. She's the title of a Jewish women's magazine. There's a national literacy program named after Lilith. There's even an annual music festival called the Lilith Fair that donates its profits to battered women's shelters and breast cancer research. So they're not in terribly
Yeah, but
bad
it's
organization.
horrible though.
Right?
It's like almost like saying, "Oh yeah, you have breast cancer. It's men's fault."
But
I
it's
mean,
so crazy because we get this idea of this demon who works with Satan, and I mean, and now in like the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, she's Satan has in that particular show, Satan has killed Adam. She was in love with Adam, and she ends up assisting Lucifer on his fall from heaven.
Wow.
As one of the mother of witches, like she is the first, witch. There's so many different ways
She's a vampire. She's a witch. She's a spider
she's the
lady.
mother of all
evil.
Yeah, because she's depicted as like a succubus,
Wait,
going
so
in and attacking men.
In that show, she loved Adam, and then Satan killed Adam. And
Yeah,
she
as
worked
like
with
because
Satan?
she was with Adam, and
So they
she was
tied
cast
both of them
of-
together. in that
Cast out
show.
of Eden, and distraught, she's like roaming the earth because like in the show, I believe she's like kicked out because she's practicing like healing medicine or whatever, and then the Eve thing happens, but she always loved Adam, and so when Satan falls, it's really stupid because like the timeline, you're like, okay, biblically this does not line up at all.
Well, good thing
but
it's fiction.
Well,
it's fiction, but in the
Fiction,
show,
it's heresy,
she's
The problem
trying
is,
to
though-
become the leader. In the show, she temporarily becomes the ruler of hell, and so like she has this. Even though she's not like powerful, she's just a really strong witch. Like probably.
See, the problem though is this: when it comes to this kind of stuff in pop culture, people hear this stuff, and then they begin to think this is really what the Bible says.
Well, I know, in my
because that
personal
happens
life,
all the time.
I've had several people that were my coworkers come and go, "What does the Bible say about Lilith?"
Nothing.
Nothing, and that was my issue.
So I only found one area in which they cherry pick it so hard to get it to fit. There's one biblical reference, and that's in Isaiah 34:14.
This
And
is gonna be fun.
So it's interesting because there's so many. There's only one version where I even found they say her name, and it is not in any of our text. It is in. I actually had to download it. So shameless Bible plug. Download you a really cool Bible app. I had to actually go to the Orthodox Jewish Bible to find her name specifically because
Wow.
I had a.
that you see it, right?
I see where they're pulling it out.
I had a
but it's-
professor. I had a professor. I had a professor in
Where's it
college
at?
who used to say, he used to tell me that if you try hard enough, you can make the Bible say whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, this thing about it, if you, again, it goes back to this idea of eisegesis and exegesis we talked about. Shameless plug, go check out our old video on that.
What's the verse say that she was talking about?
Okay, so the verse that she's talking about here in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 14 says, "And wild animals shall meet with hyenas, and wild goat shall fly to his fellow. Indeed, there the night bird settles and finds for herself a resting place." And that's from the English Standard Version.
The night bird.
The night bird is the where they're trying to take and pull that out, because in the Hebrew, according to the footnotes here, it's unknown what animal exactly it's talking about. But what they're doing is this, okay, and it goes back to the idea of hermeneutics we talked about. We have a video on hermeneutics. Go check it out.
Another shameless plug.
Yeah, it's a shameless plug. It's called "How to Know Your Pastor's Lying to You." Go watch that video.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
classic.
that was the first video, so go check it out.
That's classic.
But we talk about the idea of eisegesis and exegesis. So eisegesis is where you start with a premise and you go into the scriptures to find that premise, okay? And you can do this not just with Lilith, you can do with anything. So like if you want to take and say, I want to take and say that women can't wear pants, okay? I'm going to find a passage that sounds like it's saying that women can't wear pants, and I'm going to start taking and go out and using that, okay? It's looking at the scriptures through the lens of your preconceived ideas and beliefs. That is not how you're supposed to interpret the scriptures. The Bible, the Bible is the final authority in what we do and what we believe. Therefore, we have to look at our beliefs through the lens of the scriptures. That's called exegesis. We let the scriptures determine what we believe. And so when we find that our beliefs don't line with what the Word of God says, we come to the conclusion that our beliefs are wrong, the Word is right, and we have to change our beliefs to match what the scriptures say. So within context there, which is a big part of hermeneutics, understanding the context of what's being talked about, here he's talking about the judgment of God against Edom and how God's going to turn Edom into a desolate place. And if you look at the whole entire thing there, it talks about how thorns shall overgrow its strongholds, nettles and thistles in its fortresses. It shall become the haunt of jackals, an abode for ostriches or owls, depending on your translation. Wild animals shall meet with hyenas. Wild goats shall cry as fellow. It's talking about how there's nobody there. It's this desolate place that wild animals have taken over, and they're just living there and kind of controlling it, and it's grown up, and there's no one there. That's the whole entire point of it. But what they're doing is taking this idea of Lilith roaming in the wilderness and being out in the desolate places, and they're trying to read into the text that she's there.
Yeah, because they're saying that like a lot of early depictions picture as a bird or a night creature, and they're like, oh, a night creature.
A night bird, yeah,
That is an unidentified, like it's not certain.
Yes.
Well, surely this is that shameless,
Well, I
again.
think there is a translation that does name her as that
Well, that
bird.
is the only version that I could find is Jewish Orthodox, where it does. I'm not going to read it because I cannot read Hebrew. I will completely butcher it. But it does say, it calls to its companion, and there Lilith dwells there and finds for itself a place of rest. And so they're taking that early.
So they're basically taking the
bird.
Yeah,
the early idea of Lilith. And
the ancient name Lilith derives from a Sumerian word for a female demon or wind spirit, the Lilitu, and the related Lilai and Lilut. Dwells in the desert, laying in an open country, spacious, and is especially dangerous to pregnant women and infants, bird-like, flying, desolate. They're just, again, you're
But this isn't
carrying,
exactly. But this isn't exactly saying. It feels super shoehorned.
It is,
Yeah,
but
it
this
is
is the only way people who believe this
can
connect it, can try and connect
Yeah.
it. There is no other.
Yeah.
And my research, that's the only plug I could even find. And it's not even close. I mean, that's not even, if you have to look through every version, and I mean, there are countless versions of biblical texts, especially in this app, and we had to go to an Orthodox text. I can't even read Hebrew and Jewish text. So again, and I'm no expert in Hebrew. That could be something completely different in the Hebrew language. And so...
And as far as the Genesis account is concerned, it's really important we understand that Genesis 1, okay, when we find the tale of creation in Genesis 1, we get this overview, okay, of the creation, of everything, all the way down to the last man. When we get a more detailed, when we get to Genesis chapter 2, what we're getting is a more zoomed in, detailed account of how the first man and the first woman were created, Adam and Eve. Lilith is not in there in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Right.
So they're reading, again, it's eisegesis, reading into the text, trying to say, well, Lilith is here because she's that first female. And I believe, if I remember right, I think I said so, the Gnostics also kind of follow this idea that Lilith was Adam's first wife, and the Gnostics were a group of heretical people who had some really weird beliefs. But anyways.
It's just fascinating how old this heresy is.
Well, I mean,
it's almost all
it
the way.
shows that heresy's been around for a long time. It's not a new idea. The idea of twisting the scriptures is not new. It's been going on for eternity, or
but she's
take that
been
back. Not eternity, since the beginning of mankind. I mean, Satan did it the first time in the Garden of Eden.
I mean, it basically starts right there at the Tower of Babel. I mean, that's where you almost have her show up right after that as the demon, whatever she
Winged
is.
spirit.
Winged spirit. She shows up right there.
Well, did it say it was
So
in the
it's
Tower
kind
of
of like-
Babel or more in ancient
So
Babylon?
there is
There is a difference.
There is.
so much more. Just regarding this, where she is at the Tower of Babel,
Okay.
they have she's the mother of like demons. There's so many
Interesting.
old texts that points to her as like the mother of all these evil things. Really, I guess it all has to come from somewhere, and so this lore just kind of stuck
just
her
fun.
here and was like, okay, so everything came. I guess we all like starting points. Everyone likes the origin of a story, and so they just were like.
It's like a really, really, really long game of telephone.
Yeah.
It is it's a myth that is turned into a really long game of telephone.
It also, it shows that, in humanity, we always want to have someone to blame. We don't like blaming ourselves whenever things go bad in our lives or when things go wrong in our lives. So we want someone else we can put the blame on. And so for them back in these ancient times, she was the person to blame, or the person, for instance, to explain away why did my
Bad
wife
things
die?
happen?
Why did my wife die in childbirth? Well, she died because of Lilith. It could have been that she died because, her pelvic opening was too small, so she couldn't pass your child, and so she died of stress and her blood pressure shot up and she got a stroke and died. That could have been the reason why, the real reason why, but medically they didn't understand that at that time. And so they sought an explanation for it, almost kind of like, Salem witch trials, which I know we kind of mentioned that earlier when we were talking, but, a lot of the things that happened with Salem witch trials, it was just hysteria. That's all it really was. It had nothing to do, these people never really did anything to take and cause this stuff to happen. They were looking for witches and they were trying to find one. And if you go out in a witch hunt and you're looking hard enough, you're going to find something. Okay? It's just kind of the way things work. I mean,
That woman knows about medicine and science. She's a witch.
yeah, I mean, it's almost kind of like that, it was, it's kind of funny that you say that, because the book I'm reading right now, or that I just went through, that I was talking about earlier, it talked about how this demon was supposedly on this boat, and it wasn't a demon, it's these people. In the book, one of the ladies in the book, who's one of the protagonists, she has a daughter who's very, very brilliant. But because she's so smart, her mom has to hide her, because it's set like the 1600s, and she's so intelligent and so smart, she actually comes up with a system of navigating the seas outside of the normal channels that they're accustomed to navigate in, because she's brilliant. But because she's so brilliant, they hide her because people are going to think she's some kind of witch or something like that and try to kill her. And so, yeah, that kind of mindset happened. It's just the idea of brilliance, especially amongst women, was just kind of looked down on it. But
Which
honestly,
is unfortunate.
It is.
yeah, it's sad.
And clearly
that
why
women were treated that way.
Clearly why they latched on to Lilith anyway is just a feminist did later on.
After this, the next is the Zohar.
The Zohan.
The Zohan?
Zohan.
Zohar. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's
Zoroastrian?
first compiled in Spain by Moses de Leon in 1250. That's her next big text that she appears in.
So the Zohan is a text.
Zohar.
The Zohar.
Sorry.
Zohan is the...
Sorry.
They're
the
also
Adam Sandler
taking
movie.
I've never
from
actually
like
seen
some
that.
like that Genesis 1 and 2 where it changes and that she
Yeah.
that male and female were separated. And again, reading way too into scripture. That she becomes this mother of, that's where that origin of her becoming the mother of all these bad things comes from, and it's she's a temptress of innocent men, a breeder of evil spirits. She's a carrier of disease. So this idea of her
pestilence on there.
Yeah, I mean it literally grows. She wanders about the night, vexing the sons of men. She hovers over her suspecting victims, and she inspires lust, and infects their children with disease. So it kind of grows from there, and I think that's where our more modern day depictions of her being, all-knowing and spooky, come from. So it's fascinating to see that there are all these like really old ancient texts. That it's like the first one I read it was like, you know what? But wouldn't it be more interesting if she did this, 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 this?
Yeah.
And they added it, and so then you have this.
Yeah, it's almost like
It probably was someone's crazy Aunt Lilith that started out with, and they're just like, man, she is nuts, It's like
almost like she's a demon.
So they say like it's interesting because in the Zohar, well, it's
you can make money
interesting.
off this.
Yeah.
So in the Zohar, she it allegedly that she's promiscuous. And she will be that way until God destroys all evil spirits. That she attempts to, in this text, she attempts to seduce King Solomon, and under the guise of the Queen of Sheba.
Huh.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting.
But when the Israelite king spies her hairy legs, they realize.
Realize she's French. No.
Again, like this idea of a spider, like a black widow almost.
Okay.
So that's kind of where this idea of
I just got it
Always
from my
going back to
Dungeons and
Solomon.
Dragons.
But no, I'm
Eyes
thinking
are
this
hairy
is,
legs.
like,
I mean,
can
you
you imagine, like, she's
mentioned-
sitting there in a skirt, but it's like a spider leg. I'm like, oh, dude,
Because
run.
you mentioned like wind spirits and stuff, and being the tabletop gamer that I am, I'm thinking like, when we play our tabletop games, when you're looking for monsters for your party to fight, there are wind spirits and wind elementals, and it's like I could probably take one of those out pretty easy. That's just
Got a big fan.
No, they can take damage. They can take damage from weapons. They just have resistance. It's a nerdy thing. But I get like going through the history, going through the history of Lilith, because I'm in this kind of fan base. I can see like inspirations of her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, or inspirations of really anything.
Yeah.
They said like some of the Europe's best known artists and writers, Johann, I'm gonna say it wrong,
Bach.
Goethe,
Go.
refers to Lilith in Faust.
Really? Interesting.
In
In the poem
Faust.
Faust.
It's a book he wrote. Faust.
And it's penned Adam, Lilith, and Eve, another testament to the she demons enduring power through text and lore.
The bunny trail never ends.
No, she's also the imagery of Lilith is the White Witch, and C.S. Lewis is the Chronicles of Narnia.
Interesting.
So that's where that idea of this woman who's, she's very sinister. She's there to kill the sons of Adam. So the White Witch of Narnia is a lot of that inspiration is also
Pulled from Lilith.
yes.
So you just have this
To
very.
ask C.S. Lewis if he thought that was where he got that from. I don't know. But anyways.
I mean that would be fascinating.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated by how deep it goes, because it goes back to the Jewish
It
time.
goes back a long way.
It's fascinating.
So they
because-
had this, but obviously you had
and I mean where they're pulling
very wise people of God who
to me it's fascinating.
pushed that away.
Where they're pulling it from is such a small portion of biblical
Aliens.
text. I mean, we're looking at 2 chapters and 1
You gotta
verse in
really
Isaiah.
spike the hair.
Yeah.
Aliens.
No. Aliens.
But I mean, like, it's fascinating. I mean, think
Yeah.
2 chapters and 1 verse has inspired.
Well,
Well, it's literally literally
stretch.
one verse that they were like, we're gonna take this verse and we're gonna.
But then they, they go back to.
And it really has nothing to do with her at all. It has nothing to do
It
with
says
the origin.
night
What's
bird.
fascinating though?
There are plenty
is,
of nocturnal, he said, depending on translation, it talks about owls. An owl is a nocturnal bird.
So
Yeah.
what's fascinating is think about all that we've talked about her and how little she has to actually do with Satan.
Nothing. She has nothing to do with Satan.
And biblically, even the one place
That's-
they put her, she
we're
has nothing to
bringing
do
it
with
back.
Adam.
to the devil. He really
Well,
doesn't.
but they're trying to shoehorn her in Genesis 1, saying that that when in Genesis 1 where it says God created male and female, that female is Lilith. But in Genesis 2, it's later on down the road. Which, if you read the text, you can tell it's not later on down the road.
In Genesis 1, I thought that's talking about the animals, male and female.
No. At the end of Genesis 1, it talks about how then God said, let us make man in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.
Oh.
So God created man as his own image. In the image of God he created him, and male and female he created them.
Literally, verse 27 is where they're picking up that he created a man in his own image.
Yes.
And in the image of God he created him. And then it separates them into male and female. They're saying that
female is Lilith, and then
The second one
in
is
Genesis 2,
split
they're
off.
saying
Yeah.
that is Eve.
Eve.
But the problem is this. If you read that text and then you read chapter 2, you can see it literally says he makes Adam, then he turns around and makes Eve because no helpmeet is found for Adam. And so apparently Lilith wasn't there because she would have been the helpmeet.
Yeah, and so they're taking
and
this.
so it's
Yeah, I mean,
it's total
literally.
eisegesis. It's total reading into the text what you want to believe.
that's one of my pet peeves. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people take the scripture
I cannot
and they're like,
stand
it
it.
means this, and I'm like, that makes no sense.
Well,
Yes.
it's just fascinating
Like,
that.
you aren't even reading what it says.
this is the oldest version of that,
Well,
really.
It's fascinating that like it's in the in
Or
all
at
the-
least
the
one of them.
devil may do this. That so little of Satan and the devil is actually
Yeah.
has to do with
Like,
Lilith.
well,
Like
well-
it's just like he's over there like, man, this chick has stole my thunder. Feminist, shakes his
Kind
fist.
of, because
Well,
there is the principle of
Can you imagine like
Lilith
Satan
made
being
me
like,
do it.
Satan's just sitting wherever he's at right now. He's like, who is Lilith? Why are you saying that I know her? Never met her in my life.
Well, but the thing is, you got to understand though that the idea of Lilith, as far as that part is concerned, really is something that Satan would promote. Okay, it's an idea of destroying God's plan for family. Okay? For marriage. Destroying God's order of authority that we find in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. That you find within marriage. And it's not an order of intelligence, it's not an order of value in any way, shape, or form, but God knows that someone has to be the head, and He's ordained that biblically husbands are supposed to be the head of their wives, as Christ is the head of the husband. And so that is a rejection of biblical stance. And so yeah, it probably does have its origins with Satan.
Yeah, because
he wants to destroy everything God's made, and he rejects everything God's made and pushes people to reject what God has made. And so that's a perfect
he probably
picture of
like
it.
loves this part. He's he's like, yeah, this has worked out pretty good
it's like,
for
this is
me.
a good idea, yeah.
Especially now with like movements that don't like the traditional idea that God has for marriage and relationships and
Yeah.
all of that. Here's this image of a woman who was like, heck no, I don't want a man. Adam, I barely knew
black
him.
woman who doesn't need no man. That's right. But
And so now this idea created like a whole movement, and
yes.
and it's a movement that doesn't really line up with.
And it doesn't, and it pre-assumes that when God created men to be douchebags from the get-go,
that man never had a chance.
that man never had a chance. And the thing is biblically, as husbands, we're called to take and love our wives the way Christ loved our church. I love the church, not our church, but the church.
Well, every church.
He does love our church, but every church, yes, as Christ loved the church. And so, how did Jesus love the church? He loved the church by laying down His life for it. And so that's how we as husbands are supposed to love our wives. We're supposed to lay our lives down.
Well, see, and that's another thing is when people, when feminists take these verses, they read like the first part of the verse,
Yeah.
and then they don't read the rest of it because like the first part of the verse says about submission, like, oh, there it is, and
Yeah.
I'm like, keep reading.
Read the rest. Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to submit, but I'm supposed to die for you if I have to.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so it's not taking all of the text, reading into it what you want to read into it, taking out of it just what you want to take out of it to try to justify your stance and your mindset. And that's why, I always encourage you guys, and I encourage all of you, be students of the scriptures. Get you a copy of the Bible. If you don't have one, please email us. You can do that at info@exaltcc.com, info@exaltcc.com. We would love to send you a Bible. Just give us your address. We'll send you one.
Or if you have any questions,
if you have any questions, email us the questions.
Yeah.
We'll be
Leave
more
a
than happy to answer
comment.
those.
We
Leave
will-
it in the comments. Or if you want to leave a comment saying, hey, I'd like to have a Bible, here's my address. Okay.
Don't do
Don't
that.
do
Don't do that. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, use the email for the
Use
Bible.
the email for the address of the Bible. But if you have a question, feel free to put it in the comments. We'd love to take an answer.
We'll try to answer it in the next episode.
Possibly, yes. So,
Whatever that may
Seriously,
be.
leave us a question.
Or we'll have Brent go down and answer them in the comments. He doesn't do anything, right?
ah, it's cool.
Ouch.
Come on.
Ouch.
Come on.
We haven't made fun of him in a little while.
Yeah, it has been.
That's good.
So,
Well, it's just been like an hour maybe, but still.
all right. Well, I think that pretty much sums up Lilith. And I hope you come back and join us next time. Please feel free. Please make sure you subscribe, like this video, hit the notification bell so you can get notifications
Share
next time
it.
we put one of these out. And please share this with your friends. Put us on your social media.
Because you guys are probably not like us, and all our friends are in this room.
So, but yeah, please feel free to take and let other people know about this. And we'll see you next time.
See you guys next time.
That's the end.